So let's start with the second half of day 9. Okay, that is lab 19. So in lab 19, we will see that how we can increase reusability by creating a two-tier architecture. Now, if you watch the current state of the application, it is pretty nice, but look at the duplicate code, when we connect to the database. Wherever we are connecting to the database, right, that code is repeated again and again and again. I mean to say, we always go and, initialize the connection string. We go and then open the connection object. We fire the command object. We fill our data set, or must be execute the command object, and then we close the connection. So this, this code, right, is repeated again and again across project. In other words, if you want to just see that where this code is repeated again and again, for example, if you just go and search for this SQL connection word in your project, you can find that in so many places, this code is duplicated. So you can see like it's duplicated here in the load customer function. It's duplicated here in the BTN preview click. It's duplicated here again in the load customer. Again, if I click here, again in the display customer, it is duplicated. In the BTN delete, it is duplicated. So you can see this code is scattered across the project and creating lots of redundant code. So it would be great, if we can, move this data connection code into a separate library altogether and reuse it again and again. So in other words, rather than going and pasting this thing in multiple places, how about taking this code and moving it to a different library altogether and then referencing that library, rather than copy pasting this code again and again. So what it means is that, we have to take this code out and move it to a different layer altogether, or to a different tier altogether. That means we have to now break our project into two logical pieces. One, which has the user interface, and the other one, which has the data connection code, right? So how do we do that? So in order to increase reusability, what we will do is, let's go ahead and add a simple class library project. So you can see that I'm adding a new project here, and this project I'm going to go and add a class library project. So you can see that I have selected the type as class library, and I'm going to give a nice name here. So let's give a name as data access, right? And let's go ahead and create this project. So you can see that I have created a very simple class here called as CLS SQL Server, and you can see that I am referencing the system.data.sql client namespace here. Great. Now let's go to the customer data entry screen, and let's start moving the data access code one by one to this central class library over here. Now if you watch the code very closely, right, if you watch the data access code in our project very closely, there are two kinds of code we have. One code which actually loads the data set, and this data set is then bound to a data grid or read somewhere. Okay. And the other kind of code actually does DML operations, that is insert, updates, and delete. That means wherever we are firing the execute non-query, it's nothing but it's doing a DML operation, right? Now what we'll do is, let's start one by one. Let's first move the dataset kind of code into this CLS SQL Server class here. So what I'll do is, I'm going to go and return a data set, from this class here. So for that, the first thing, if you want the data set in your project, you have to import system.data namespace. So I'll say, okay, this function, that is get customers, will actually go and return you what you call a data set object, which will actually have all the customer records. So what I'll do is, I'll take this search customer code from here, and right from here, from the opening of the connection, and I will control X this, and I will move it here, right, to this get customers function. Great. And definitely I don't want the grid view code over here. So this